souls began to intertwine. Your heart of gold, so pure, divine. And I lost myself within the fire, breaking free from my desire. A heart of gold, forged to inspire. It's starfire. It's starfire.
Okay, so let's see what's going on. Okay, let's first start maybe a little bit of a project here. And maybe get a couple of people here and hold on a second. So what are we going to do today? That's basically the question is, so as you probably saw on the Discord, we kind of had a vote, and that was a little bit about what are we going to build with Neon 3. And let's see what that actually means. So I'm going to start a project completely from scratch, right, in order to do that, and then we kind of walk through what we want to achieve. Let me quickly see what opens up here. Okay, that's not really the project I want to see right now. Hold on, this takes longer than expected. Come on. Come on, come on, come on, come on. Okay. Come on. Yeah. So I probably have just too much things going on right now. Oh, Periscope doesn't work. Let me see. Let me see what's the issue with Periscope. So as usual, the preferred channel for this is Twitch, but you will see me on Facebook, on YouTube, and normally Periscope, but something's not working with that. I'm going to look into that right now prior to starting out. Meanwhile, you guys can start with a new project. So we're going to call this project, what are we going to call this project? Hold on, let me quickly see. We're going to call this project CodingGrounds. Sure. Let's do that. Let's do that. So it is CodingGrounds. It is. CodingGrounds it is. And we're going to open this whole thing in this window. Okay, so what is basically what we want to do? I mean, let's capture a couple of ideas here, right? So in the Discord that you probably saw, we have a couple of things that are basically the prerequisites of what we're trying to capture here. So we had a little vote on what we want to build, and what we do want to build today is basically the general setup of how would such an app work in general. So you all know stuff like lead code, where you basically have like a coding quiz that you can go through, and then the question is how does that work on a general basis. Let's get a couple of things set up here. So we have a basic structure. Right now this is completely empty. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the terminal and say, okay, Neon 3, new app, CodingGrounds. coding grounds, just to keep this, basically get this started here. All right. Okay. Let's click on the server here. Okay, so that's what it gives us basically, right? That's our pure Neon 3 instance running. So nothing too interesting from this perspective. This is what we kind of expected. And then here's the short introduction to how this basically works. So far, so good. Let's put this to the side a little bit and talk about a couple of things that we want to talk about. So the first thing that I'm going to do is to probably make a little bit of a list of, okay, what do we need from a high point level, right? Because just a little bit of a list maybe. So what I'm going to do is simply say Neon 3 new component. I'm going to call this to do. I'm going to say that's a route component. I want to create a view. I do not need a frame at this point. Actually, let's reconsider. I'm going to use the demo frame for now. And so that should have created us our component to do. And let's quickly look at the view here so we can kind of see this. Sorry about that. So I should already be able to navigate here. To do. Okay, so that's basically my component. So what I want to do here is basically capture a little bit of, maybe let's do that here, right? And say, okay, what do we have here? I want to have a very basic, let me clean this up here a little because we have to deal with the little amount of space we have here. I want to create a little bit of a to-do list array that I basically say, okay, that's an array of array. So here we have the name, and that is basic login, right? Login auth, and then we simply have a done, which is false. Okay, and here I'm going to start to enter those and say like, okay, be sure to give this our to-do list. The only thing that I'm going to do here so I can reference it is list. Right, going to do it like that. And here, let's create a list for that. Where I here basically say section n4, and then I say list as item, and here I'm basically going to have a very, very simple span that basically says item name. Quickly see if that works. Yeah, it does work. Okay. I'm not sure why the span is so huge. Probably want to do something more along the line of this and then like this. There we go. Okay. So what are we want to do, right? What do we want to do? So we probably want to have some kind of login. Then we are going to say, okay, so we need our models. And then we need basically our environment. Right? So those are a little bit the things that we're trying to achieve. So how does something like that look like? The first thing that we're probably going to wonder is, okay, what kind of views are we going to use? There is probably something, where you are on a particular challenge, let's say, right, that will be part of our models. And that basically would then execute, like, okay, so you can write your code, the code must be executed, and you need also some kind of description of what you're trying, basically what you're supposed to solve, right? So we will basically need a database for all of this that we might as well just create right now. So in order to basically do this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a .env file, and I can do that basically directly in here. Let's actually quickly see what's going on here. Hold on. Yeah. Just checking how things are going from our perspective over here. Sorry, just have to interact with someone here. None of that we need. Let's quickly stop those service workers here, as well as that one. Okay, and we have a little bit of time here. That's good. That's pretty awesome. Okay. So far, so good. Wonder what's going on with Periscope. That's all right. That's all right. We can handle that. We can handle that. Let's just see what's going on here on Discord. Good evening, man. Hey, let me get him in here in my live interaction channel here and see what's going on. Hey. Okay. Let's see what he says to my new chat ability here. Okay. So from a drawing board perspective, right? We have to talk about a lot of security, but let's just maybe get to the point where we have like a little bit of general setup. So again, the login is probably something that we want to address first, or we're going to omit that for now and kind of think like, okay, what kind of models do we actually want to have? So the first thing that I'm personally going to do is create a .env file. You can also, actually, let's do that. Let's use the credential settings that we also have a possibility to use. So the database setup that I can do, if I look into and we don't have anything like that set up. So maybe in the first step, what we're going to do is to say, okay, Neon 3, new frame, and then we're going to call this CodingGrounds. Let's do that. So now we have basically a frame CodingGrounds, and let's look into that a little bit and say, okay, what do we really need? And from my perspective, the only thing you really need is a database functionality, at least right now, right? So let's create a construct that ultimately executes the parent. Parent construct. And after that happens, what we want to do is we want to set our DB environment. And in that case, it's not going to be so super interesting. What we do want to do, actually, even here, let's do that differently and say we're going to give this whole thing a private credentials with the $. Hello. Oh, hold on. Is that not working? Is that not working? Oh no, it's somebody else. Hey. Hi, CLOT1201. How's it going? let's basically say we have our credentials here. And what we are going to do is we're going to say, okay, this credentials is, this is for, we're basically building something, just answering a question here from CLOT. We're basically building something a little bit along, well, imagine like a lead code light, right? So where you basically have challenges that you can solve on the platform, and then basically coding challenges, right? How to do those, and we're basically building something like that. So we're going to use our get credentials function, right? That's a Neon 3 function. It's, as you can see, this can throw an exception. So let's try that. Right? We don't want the construct itself to throw an error here. So that is something that we are going to try, because if that doesn't work, we kind of have like a hard stop here and say no. That is not what we want to ever happen. So if that happens, then let's simply do something drastical and say print, or actually just even more radical. Whoops. And say die, setup failed. Like making ways to learn coding. Yeah, a little bit like that, right? So what we're going to do is to build a to learn coding, to exchange kind of like challenges that you can then kind of like solve, and basically a coding learning platform. Sure, if you wanted. So I mean, those code golfing challenges, honestly, whether or not you really learn something from them, I don't really know. It's a little bit like a sport, right? Where you say like it's like competitive programming would be like the keyword that people use nowadays. So that kind of stuff. And we're going to use the Neon 3 framework to basically help us get this done in a relatively short amount of time. So this credentials here, right, is that doesn't really exist yet. So for my database, I need a couple of things that kind of like just exist. So what that is in particular is it needs to have a user, right, a database user, a database host. It needs to have a database password. And in our case, it needs a couple of other things. It needs to have assumes UID, so that's just like the kind of IDs we're going to use. Rather than auto-incremented IDs, we're going to use unique IDs, and so that's basically something we want to set. So CLOT is very new to coding and has little experience, as I took some in high school and dealing with it in college. Yes, that's quite common, right? And we have a couple of beginner things that we talked to earlier. This is actually something where you kind of already like know the basics and are somewhat comfortable with web development, at least to the extent where you were able to follow what I'm doing here and kind of see what the outcome of that is. Right, so let's maybe start with our general database setup, right? So we have our get credentials. Again, this is, all right, and Emho cannot jump on today. This is basically how we are reading it from the Neon 3 CLI tool, which is something that we now need to be setting up. So I have not created any database for this yet. Let's basically do this. You can do that with whatever you want, you know, PHPMyAdmin or your Workbench, or however you do that. I'm quickly going to simply say there's not so much I really need to do. What I need to do is to say, okay, create database, and then what do we call this? CodingGrounds is our project name. So that's going to be my database, and that's actually all I need this to do. And as soon as I have that, I can kind of simply attach that, right? And say, okay, that is a MySQL database. And localhost is correct. And then we have root, we have no password. And then here we have our CodingGrounds project. Let's see if that works. Yep, that works just fine. Of course, it's an empty database, so a little bit boring here. Let's get a couple of things filtered out here that we don't need. Okay, so here's now just my database. So let's first see whether or not we can create that. So with, there's a neon3 credentials command, right, that you can utilize. So what that is doing is it allows you to create new credentials, which we will do now. And we will call those CodingGrounds database. Okay, let's call it like that and say, okay, create new. So the name of property again, and now we know, okay, so user defaults to root, so I'm happy with that on my end. Host defaults to localhost. I'm also happy with that on my end. My password is empty, and that's what it defaults to. So I'm also good on my end. I need the name, which by the way, I kind of forgot to mention up here, right? Database name. So I'm going to create the property name and then say that would be CodingGrounds. Ideally without a typo. Okay, and then I say create a new property, and that would be assumes UID, and the value here is true. Okay, so as you can see, those are the two fields in my credentials now, and I'm happy with that, and say, okay, save and exit. Okay, now that means that in my credentials, if I do set environment, the only thing I really need to do here is to say, okay, what was the name of the credentials again? Here it was CodingGrounds_DB. Okay, and that should be all that I need to do for setting up my database connection. Now let's find out how true that is. If we have this CodingGrounds, let's go to the to-do and see like we're going to use this now instead of our demo. So here I'm basically going to say, no, that's not correct. This is now CodingGrounds. And let's see what that changes from the output that we have over here, right? So, okay. So now we have no styling included whatsoever. That's also what we kind of expect. And so this is basically now our general output. So now that we have our CodingGrounds, let's think about like how what kind of models we would actually use for this. And that's a question that we kind of have to ask ourselves depending on how this is going to look like. So I have a pretty clear concept in my head of how that would kind of work. But of course, let's basically talk about how that would look like, and then we have kind of a better feeling for it, maybe, right? So let's create something, and let's first kind of like see what is the easiest. Let's actually do something like let's do something like Bulma, right, as our front-end framework. So you can see that's an npm install Bulma. That's actually something that we kind of want to do right now, right? And say, sure, let's get ourselves a front-end framework first, CSS framework, sorry. Install Bulma. And let's make sure that we actually kind of get that going for us here. Okay. Okay, fair enough. And so if this is the first time you're working with Bulma, Bulma is a CSS only framework. That's pretty important because you don't really want to use something like Bootstrap that then relies on jQuery and its own stuff and so on, that makes it pretty messy, and you're then kind of boxed in. And if you then work with something like, you know, Vue or React, then you have to either get the correct version out, or kind of work around some things that, I mean, that's all kind of like not necessary. So let's see how that is intended to work, right? So the whole installation process is something that I wish they would have kind of like started. Okay. Yep. So we're going to use this version here, and then we kind of say, okay. That's all a little bit boring here. Okay, they simply use a CDN for that. And that one I don't even know. That's interesting. Okay. So the reason why you want to do something like the npm installation, and I kind of wonder why they don't mention that here, is because, actually, let's look at this quickly, right? And say, okay, what does this do? So now we have node modules that have Bulma included. Now, Bulma basically ships, if I look at the CSS, as its done CSS class, but that will not allow me to kind of use what I want to use. So I cannot really say, well, how do I then influence, you know, what the primary color is and all that kind of stuff. So that is something that you kind of always want to realize, that when you're using things like out of the box, then you always have this kind of issue where you say, okay, but what if I want to make changes to how it's running, right? So the ideal solution is to basically use some kind of preprocessor. So Bulma is intended to be used with Sass, as you can see. That's a little bit how it works here. And I suppose that if we looked into that, then we could kind of like see how that looks like under the hood, and then those files all get basically rendered together. So what we could basically try is to say, well, okay, so what if in our CodingGrounds frame, if we created a new style sheet that would be a Sass file, right? So they're using .sass. Gotta be careful with those differences between SCSS and Sass. And then basically said, okay, this is style. Okay. So I have this possibility to simply enable a file watcher, which I will do. Just take advantage of it here and say, okay, let's create a new file watcher that is going to be Sass. And I don't seem to have Sass installed, which is a little bit of a bummer. Yeah, that's probably the first thing that we kind of want to take care of. Let's take care of that quickly. Where are we here? Okay, Sass lang, let's go there and see what's basically how this would work. So my guess is, right, that we have kind of two possibilities here that change. Yeah, okay. Okay, this actually works from npm, which is kind of cool. Let's do that then. That's kind of new. Is that really, am I not mixing that up? I hope not. Let's cancel that one quickly. Install Sass globally. A little bit of a patch here, that's okay. Let's ignore that for now. And try it out again. That's our Sass, and then that is something that we would actually have to find here, right? Insert macros, no. So my global packages are, and that is dependent on what kind of system you run and how you installed your npm and so on. Is that home? Where's my home? Quickly find what's going on here. Where is my home? There we go. Home. Okay. Don't I have it in here? Thought it did, but this doesn't show the, right? There we go. npm packages. There we go. Let's pick Sass. All right. And so here, file name without extension.css. Yep. That's what we want to do. Now let's see if in theory this works. So I'm going to just simply do like something like this and then say, let's say something like color blue. Okay. And that should suffice. Okay. So what this did for me now is it created a style CSS that basically then looks like native CSS. Do you see that? So that's basically what we're trying to achieve here. And that's, by the way, we kind of jumped over this, but I cannot really emphasize enough how much sense it makes to use a preprocessor, because we can now basically say, okay, now let's include our Bulma file, right? So what we want to do in reality is, of course, we want to do none of that, right? What we actually want to do, and let's basically go back and see, like, okay, how would that work, right? So if I now say, whoops, that was kind of premature here. If I now say says import, then you see that basically there's this at import. And that's the huge difference, right? That is native to CSS. And depending on what kind of, if you're using Sass or SCSS, the difference is that this would also basically work like it does in native CSS. So it doesn't really import a file, it references a file. Now in our case, we want to actually import a file. So that's why the choosing Sass was the right decision here. So I'm basically going to say, okay, let's do that. We are now in here, right? So we want to say, well, let's get out of here, right? And say, whoops, and let's get out again. This doesn't help me as much as I thought it would. That's probably because of where I'm running the, indeed, right? Okay, Bulma. And then Bulma, right? Let's see if that is the case, because this should be the Bulma sus. So ideally, I now imported basically everything from Bulma into my style CSS. Let's see how true that is. Can't find styles to import, so it isn't apparently. Don't want just Bulma. No, I need to go out of here relatively, right? Okay, then let's see where we are. We are in our CodingGrounds, then we want to go out to frame. So we're going to jump out 2, right? Okay. So 1, 2, and this should kind of work for us. Let's see if that's the case. Oops. And then we can basically see, okay, now our rendered style CSS has the complete Bulma stuff in there, and we can start to basically say to make the tweaks that we might want to do. So how does this style come into our actual front end, or not front end, but into our views? So what we're going to do in order to achieve that is to say, okay, let's go back into our frame and say, let's set up a couple of constants. I can overwrite the constants function and say, no, none of this is happening. And I'm going to return an array of arrays, which one of those arrays will be a style sheet, which again is an array. And if I remember it correctly, and actually we can kind of like sneak peek into the demo and see how that looks like. Yeah, that's just an array, and there, yeah, that's all we need, right? We can kind of like take this and say, hey, where's our CodingGrounds? We kind of want to do it like that and say, okay, this is our frame, CodingGrounds, and default this style CSS, right? Let's kind of see if that kind of worked for us. So we should see like minor differences now in how that behaves, and we do. Right, so not so super interesting how we look at that right now, but let's make a couple of adjustments here to the style. Oh no, let's basically close everything but this and say okay. So the way Bulma works is basically very declarative, right? So let's say I have a section with a class section and pull this in here, right? Then I see that, okay, so the way that starts behaving is that I have like offsets here, right? So it's a little bit like a different kind of container, right? If you come from something like Bootstrap. And then here I would have stuff like where I say, okay, this is a title, right? And then I can see, okay, this is now something that works like a title. And this is something that I'm just going to leave as is for now. So that's basically now our general setup, and we're basically happy with that. So now that we have a front-end framework, what we're going to do, sorry, not a CSS framework, what we're going to do is basically say, okay, we have our connection to our database. We have decided basically how this is going to kind of look like. So the first thing that we probably want to do is to say, hey, what's up with the header? Right, so let's see if we find anything that we kind of find enticing. Maybe they have something like kind of out of the box. And let's see, no modifier is probably not what I'm looking for. Let's maybe fire up something like, let me see. Let me see what we have here. It's probably the last thing that I'm checking here. I mean, why would it be here? So no. Navbar, yeah, that sounds about right. Okay, and that's our basic navbar, sure. So let's go with that maybe, right? Let's see what we can do here. And it's going to be pretty static. So what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to kind of like steal this one here, right? I'm going to jump over. Oops. I can go over here and say, okay, I want to create something. Let's close all of this in my frame because that's always going to be the case. I don't really even want to have, no, actually that's not, no, I'm not sure yet. Let's for now create it as a static file that I'm going to call header. And then basically say, okay, here we go. This is the header. Okay. So the way we can kind of get that in is if we go to our CodingGrounds and go back to a construct and basically say, okay, we're going to use the actual serve variable header. So that's a hook. And I don't even need that. I'm actually going to directly write it like this and then say, okay, file get contents. So this is super static now. And then I say, this is this very directory I'm in. And then header HTML, right? And that should actually be enough. Let's see if that kind of worked. So if we're going over here, what we should see is that we now have a header that we probably don't want to call Bulma, right? Let's talk about that maybe for a second here. So if I open our header, let's just say like our the href now is, I don't even know if we want that. And then here we have an image. And that image, okay. So that's an, okay, well, let's just basically get rid of that, right? And say where's the brand name. Oh, the whole thing is an image. Okay, got it. So for now, we're going to simply call this CodingGrounds. Right, I'm going to comment that one out. See if that's basically something okay. So far, so good. And then what kind of options do we have here? Well, let's ignore that for now. We will figure the header out later. That's probably going to, we probably need this to be dynamic anyway, right? So the only thing that I'm kind of interested in is to say like, hey, can I maybe color that a little bit? And what we probably want here is transparent navbar, fixed navbar, drop down menu, show hide the drop down. Okay, that's all kind of like stuff here. Right, drop down. Okay, drop out. Oh, this is so much more than the last time I looked at this. Let's kind of like just start to play around with it and see what we can get here. Navbar has, yeah, that's how it works. So has background, I don't know, let's say dark. See what that does for us. Okay, that's kind of cool. And then we probably also want to have to say like, okay, has text white, maybe. Okay, maybe not. And let's move this out here and say that's probably something that we should do directly here. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Let's leave it like this for now. Okay, so that's basically our basic setup. And again, I'm not going to bother with what we kind of have in here for now. That's something that we're going to figure out later. What we are probably want to do right now is to say like, okay, let's just imagine that we are on an actual challenge. So I'm going to go back into my terminal, right, and say, okay, so Neon 3, new component, challenge. And in my case, that is going to be a route component. I do want to create a view for it. I want to use a frame, and I want to use CodingGrounds. Perfect. Now let's basically visit that and see how that works. Okay, so now I'm on challenge, as you can see. So that exists now. Now let's kind of talk about how that would kind of like look like. Okay, so this is what I kind of imagine. Let's close all of those and basically make that smaller too, and then basically say, okay, how does my challenge look like? And so I would say that this kind of like has two things, right? So on the left you would have like kind of like how, let's actually look at how the let's look at how the actually I don't like how that behaves. Let's give this a little bit of here we go, columns. How does this work? So that's the basic columns, column. I could have guessed that. How does the responsiveness work? Is mobile. Okay. Oh, that kind of breaks automatically. Perfect. Let's go with that for now and say, okay, so we would have columns, and then we would have a column, and two of those, I suppose, and then here be description. And then here be editor, right? That's a little bit how that would look like for now, right? Yeah. Okay, so far so good. Now let's quickly talk about like what kind of editor we would like to have here. So maybe we have like something that we can actually use and that makes kind of sense. So what I'm going to do is to say like, oh, give me a second. Oh, there's actually a call I need to take. No, that's going to be fine. That's going to be fine. I forgot what that was called. Coding editor. Oh, is that that's probably a tiny MC plugin or something like that, right? I forgot. Let's check it out. Tiny Cloud. Let's see how that would kind of look like. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. I need to download that? No, you're joking, right? Free CDN. Self-host it. Uh-huh. Including a jQuery integration plugin. Community developer tools and full source code. Nah, this is all a bit too much. Isn't there an alternative there? I don't even know how I would basically call something like this, right? Let's try. Code editor online. I don't think that I will get anything interesting here. Code mirror. Ha. Yeah, that looks more kind of like how I probably want this to look like. Can I have like some kind of code folding themes? Okay, nice. Default. Not sure what day and night means. Okay. Yeah, I can kind of see that one happening, right? Okay. Uh-huh. Let's kind of give this a spin, I suppose, right? Libcode mirror CSS. Okay. So maybe if we give this a spin, this is literally a zip file. That is strange. Oh, really? Copen uses this. Okay, sure. Yeah, I guess it's a zip file. Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Let's try it out. Let's try it out and say sure. You do you. Let's extract this. Now I'm going to directly extract this into, what do we call this? CodingGrounds, which will be a C here. So asset, right? It's directly extracted into here. Nope. Let's kind of see what that kind of does, right? So that's the code mirror. Okay. Sure. Let's give it a shot. So I'm going to simply kind of, give this a little bit of a spin here. So here in the editor, let's quickly see. That's not where you would like this to actually be, right? I'm just trying this out right now. And I say, okay, so from our perspective, this is going to be in slash asset slash code mirror, that one, yep, lib. Okay, and kind of same here, asset code mirror. Okay, whoops, lib. Okay, and then here in my text area I don't have that, so I suppose that I'm kind of missing something here. Well, let's just assume that that exists somewhere, right? Text area with the ID test. And here we then say, okay, my text area is document dot get element by ID test. Okay, Let's kind of see how that behaves. Yeah. Okay, not as cool as I thought. Let's see what we're kind of bitching with here. Cannot read property first if undefined. Uh-huh. Well, maybe, first of all, I want to make this an actual text area. And, okay, so now I have no errors, but I also don't see anything. So let's expect whether that's the case. Oh, no, it's actually here. It's actually here. It's kind of a weird behavior. Really weird behavior. Let's kind of see why, right? Code mirror from text area. Line number is true. Uh-huh. Okay. Merge interface. Simple auto completion. Let's start with the theme maybe, right? But this is just a... Okay, how does this... What does this do? Right? Why is this behaving in such a strange way? It's because there's nothing there. Do I have to place it in here probably, right? Let's give this another spin here and say, okay, what if there was something in here? Constant A is A. How would that kind of behave? Ah, okay. Interesting. Don't know what that span comes from. Okay. But so in theory, the question is, why can't I... Is this even the right kind of... Well, why does this work here? Let's check this out. Let's go to code and see. Demo. Let's look at a couple of things here. Let's look at a couple of things here. So, okay, here is kind of what we want to see, right? So the mustache, placeholder, preview. It doesn't really matter, right? Any of those will do for now. Okay, there are a couple of add-ons. Okay, I got that. Okay. So far, so good. Yeah, but I want to see the integration. Okay. From text area, get element by decode. Okay. Well, it places all of that in here, so that's kind of interesting. That is kind of interesting. Okay, let's get this in here. The type is apparently something that might be of interest for us here. So let's just say, I'm not sure what this global vars thing is. Let's keep that out. So we probably have to read up on this a little bit. That's fine though, right? What we're interested in is just kind of like, would this work in general? It gives us the same kind of output. I wonder where this XXX comes from. Right? It's kind of weird. Kind of weird that it doesn't throw any kind of errors and nothing. Let's make sure that we actually get that stuff here. So that's called merge.js. That's loaded nicely. Even though I'm kind of wondering why. Wait, what is this? Hold on. Asset code lib code merge CSS. Is this not what I think it is? Yeah, you know what I think? Okay, that seems to work. I think if we include it like this, it's kind of a problem. Let's make sure that that's not the case. So there are two things that we kind of want to do here, right? We kind of need to move this up. So let's actually make sure that that's the case. So let's go to challenge controller, and here in our stream of consciousness, let's make sure that we actually include the stuff that we need for this particular view. So here I want to have include JS, right? And so what I'm basically going to do here is to say, okay, this is in path asset, and actually let me copy that path here before I'm going to go crazy. So that's this stuff here. All right. And we want to kind of give this data to kind of fake source. Is that how it works? Yeah. To kind of fake the that's included on the right level, and then can get rid of it here. Let's see what that does for us. Yeah. Now it completely fails. Not found. So what do we have here? Look at localhost. No, the data inclusion doesn't work correctly. Let me see why that's the case. Okay, data and data cannot be empty, right? Okay, sure. Let's force this with a little trick and say base is base. See how that behaves now. Okay. And then it says code mirror is not defined. Is it not, huh? Why is it not defined? Because this runs before, right? Let me see how we can get that to run. It's maybe our first little challenge here, right? Is to say, okay, so code mirror is at this point not defined because we define it afterwards. That's okay though. Because ultimately this will not run in here. So I'm kind of okay with that for now. So I'm gonna simply fake this here quickly and say, yeah, okay. So that we don't need. This we are gonna solve differently as well. And here we're kind of gonna simply say like, okay, let's make this work just for now, right? And we say, okay, sure. Let's make sure that that's not the case. Right, just so we can kind of test this thing right now. And now we have the exact same behavior. I wonder what that is. I wonder what that is. So, is this not editable in a certain way? Is that the problem? So what does this take? It takes get element by decode. Okay, so that will be this one, right? I have a really strange feeling that this must be in a form. We probably need to read some documentation on that one, but here's a little bit of a guess. Here's a little bit of a guess. Yeah, should probably kind of maximize that. No, so that's not it. And this is also the weirdest behavior. I wonder if that would be an issue if I actually ran it from a different context. Otherwise, this does not seem to have style sheet printer. Okay. Yeah, let's run it in a different context. What I'm going to do is something, so I'm going to go back here and actually stop this. And the reason why I'm doing that is that I'm going to see, okay, so this runs on CodingGrounds, right? So instead of the 8080, I'm going to use the Apache and say, okay, CodingGrounds challenge. Okay, now let's see what the difference is here. None. Right, okay, now this is not found, the favicon is not found. Okay, that's all cool, but it doesn't change the actual behavior of this. Well, let's see what we're doing wrong. Let's see what we're doing wrong. So what I'd be interested in, oops, that's not really what I wanted to do. What I'd be interested in is this one. And go to the manual and say, okay, so what do we really need to do here? Source mode, JavaScript, JavaScript.js. I probably always need some kind of plugin here, right? That's probably simply what I need in order to do, for it to do anything. CoffeeScript, okay, yeah, that's probably what's happening here. Okay, well, let's do that then. And say, instead of lib, let's do mode. And let's do JavaScript slash JavaScript.js. Let's see what that's doing for us. Nothing. Okay. So we've got our quote mirror, we've got the quote mirror CSS. Okay. Then, okay. Quote mirror document body, value function. Okay, okay, okay. Mode JavaScript. Yeah, our mode looks a little bit different, I think. Mode name JavaScript. So maybe not do that and say, what if we wanted to do it like that? Okay. Would that work for us? It does nothing. It does nothing. Just out of curiosity, what if I kind of completely got rid of this? Just because I really want to know where those things come from. And why is this even so strangely colored? Missing label. Yeah, okay. Name test. Just out of curiosity of. Yeah, I still don't know where those X's come from. This is like the weirdest thing. The weirdest thing. Like, why would it do that? Okay. Okay, so I guess we don't want to append the editor to an element in controller. Okay. Module loaders. Okay, let's see. This is the basic usage, right? So this should in theory work. We're loading the quote mirror JS. We're doing that, right, from lib. Hold on, where are we doing this here? Quote mirror JS. Okay, got that. That's loaded. Then we'll get the style sheet in. I mean, okay, to be fair, that's not really what's happening here. Let's be clear about that. Add style sheet and say, all right, that's in base asset. Actually, let me steal that as well, just to be super clear that this is something that we're gonna do super nicely here. Okay, and then we can get rid of it here. But I mean, I'd be okay. Yeah. let me guess, this does not. Okay. So I cannot run the add style sheet here on the fly unless I kind of fake this. Unless I kind of fake this and say, okay, let's here drop in our uni context, and then I can do something like uni, and then add style sheet, right? And after that, I kind of say, okay, and then return the instance again. So if I do that, then here I can simply say callback, and the context then would be this, and then I simply say style sheet, right? And get rid of base. Okay, that's how we can kind of fake that one. Okay. Oh, it's really the damn style sheet. I cannot believe it. Okay. I am very confused, but it seems to work. Okay. That's actually kind of cool because so those kind of modes and so on, that's probably going to end up in depending on where we are, right? Code mirror setup. Let's do it like this. And so here we're going to say, I have to write it like that, otherwise I'm going to go insane. Here we're going to call that one, and this kind of shebang here is dependent, right? So now it's simply going to be here. Because later on in the game we will kind of see whether or not, that's always going to be JavaScript or not, which, by the way, it might be out of a very, very simple reason. If we probably will not get into how to create a sandbox to execute code safely on the server. So we might basically end up just doing JavaScript on this whole challenge thing here. Okay, so far so good. And this apparently did not work. Because now this happens too early. Fair enough. How do you feel now? Better, right? Okay. Okay. So far so good. So far so good. So again, this is a little bit of our challenge here. So here will be a description of the challenge. Here we will then be the code execution. And basically below that thing, right? So here will then we, so let's actually finally get rid of that stuff here. And not going to happen right now. Not going to happen at all right now. Yeah, that's going to work differently. Let's ignore that for now again. But after our columns, which is literally here, we then basically get to something where we say, okay, it's going to be a new section with kind of our subtitle of our evaluation, right? Okay. Okay. So in theory, the way this kind of works, right, is that we're going to kind of build together how the let's just do a static example here. Yeah, let's maybe do this, where I kind of say like, please, actually let me create a section around that one too. Just so later on we have a better possibility of actually styling this. We'll get to that at a later point. Okay. Okay. Create a function that adds or returns the input by the power of 2. Oops. Okay, so that's how this kind of looks like. And then the question is, okay, so after this form here we would have some kind of button. Let's create a label around this guy here. Is this correct? And this is code, and this is code, name is code, and then here we would have your solution. Okay, and after this shebang we're going to have a button, and I'm just going to guess that there is something like a button. Okay, and the test function, right? See how that would look like. Okay, there's something it doesn't like, and I know what that is. This is code. Okay, what could possibly be wrong with this now? Other than this. Okay. Sure. Okay. So the point that we have here, right? If we say, okay, this creates, and if I create now any kind of function, how would that kind of look like? So let's just say if I say to the power of 2, right? If I would name it like this, and then have some kind of input, right? Then the problem that I would have is, okay, so how would our evaluation know how this function is called, right? So this is something that we kind of cannot really do. So there are two possibilities. We can either dictate that, which is a possibility, right? So let's just say we have something like create a function to the power of 2, right? And then kind of like dictate that and say like, okay, this needs to simply be called like that. And actually right now we might as well just kind of do that, right? And fly with that. I mean, that's a good solution for the beginning, I suppose. What we could of course also do is to kind of say, all right, maybe not, right? Maybe the solution is to create something like a function main that would then like go and see what kind of function names we kind of have. But in more complex scenarios, when you imagine that people like create multiple functions to achieve something, that would make our system way more complex, which is something that I kind of want to avoid, right? So for now, what I'm going to do is, and I'm going to write all of this directly in here, which already kind of kills me, but let's do this for now. And say, okay, so we want to basically say here, this has some kind of ID that we're going to call submit code. Okay, and here we're going to say document dot get element by ID, and it's called submit code. Yeah, that's the only thing that we basically need, right? And then we kind of like add event listener, submit. Now, the only thing that we really are concerned about here, right, is to kind of like not get anywhere. So the only thing that I really want to do for now is to say event.prevent default. And then, for our purposes now, I'd be highly interested in how we access this editor now. So let's kind of find that out. Let's maybe get our inspector here and say, okay, so if we ran this again, and now set, okay, so function to the power of 2, such a stupid example. Such a stupid example. And then set something like, actually we don't really care at this point, right? Alert here. Let's do it like that for now and see what we get. Oh, editor is not defined. Yeah, so that makes sense because it isn't at the point of the event listener, right? Yeah, so we have this in the timeout, right, which isn't global, and that's where things get a little bit dicey. So what I could of course do is to say, well, what if I simply had to find this outside of here, right? Could I reference this in here then? And as you can already see, it's like this is something that, well, actually, hold on, let's be smarter about this. Then this would actually reference here outside of the anonymous function that we have, right? So let's give this a shot and see what that does for us. And I'm going to be wise and kind of copy this before I reload. Actually, I'm going to be even wiser, and while we're developing, I'm going to place this in my text area. Right? Say, hey, let's have this here for now. Ooh, in all its beauty, I guess. I mean, something like a prettifier is probably something that we need anyway. Right? Yeah, exactly. Otherwise, we will have this phenomenon here, but that's fine for us now. And then, hey, now I get my code mirror. So let's see, right? So there's a save function, which is interesting. To text area, get text area, document. Let's see what we have here. Let's see what we have here. I would kind of like to see what this function returns, right? Get text area. I guess it's actually easier to simply read that quickly to say, okay, so how do I get that out? How do I get that out? Okay. This is for required.js. We don't really need that kind of stuff here. Those are the things that we can place in here. Oh, that's going to be super interesting for later, but let's see if that actually reads it. Let's make a different example here before we do that and say, hey, before we actually explore this whole code mirror thing, is there a possibility to say, do we have this code somewhere? No, we don't. Console log, document, get element by ID, code dot value. Let's quickly see that if we have any kind of output here, right? So if we test it now, Hold on. Did we not save this? It's not even empty. Is it empty? No, it's just not doing anything. That's kind of interesting. Ah, there it is. Okay, well, let's see. Crap, that's what I thought. So I guess we kind of need to run the save thing first, huh? Just a guess. Wild guess before I kind of have to say like, all right, let's actually read how this code mirror works first. But because normally I like to kind of know what I'm doing. Okay, so I probably want to do editor.save. Save changes from saved. Okay. I'm going to run that one and kind of see what that is going to do for me. So my guess is, and we can actually simply test it by that. Yes. Huh. See? Cool. That works like a charm. Okay, cool. That is kind of cool, right? So the next question is, of course, okay, so how do we safely run this? And that is definitely something that I am very excited to get into. But let's first kind of like take a break here because I want to read more about this code mirror and how that works. But as you can see, the actual setup, I mean, right now, we don't have, it's a little bit static here, but we can start experimenting with how that would look like and how we would set up our tests and so on for each case. So that's kind of cool. I guess we got something running. What I will do before I'm kind of like off here is I will share this on GitHub publicly, right? So you guys can basically see that. I'm probably going to jump quickly into the, where the hell am I here? In the assets. Quickly into my, where would that even be? Where's my README? Oh, that's lowercase README. Okay. And kind of like say, okay, this is a CodingGround live dev project. Where I'm going to say at twitch.tv/neoan3. And probably kind of like the only thing I'm kind of interested in here is to say prerequisites, and then I'd simply say Neon3 CLI, and actually before that even let's have a composer and git, I don't have to mention git on GitHub, and then node. And then I guess PHP, right? Okay. Yeah, so far so good. Now let's say good for browse CV share project GitHub, right? There's this kind of cool thing here. Let's make this public, and here say like check out twitch.tv/neon3 for progress. All right. So far so good. So I'm going to spare you the idea, and the rest you kind of need, right? Do I have the assets, the components? What we probably want to have, now that I look at it, and before we even do that, is why the hell is the what? Could ignore. Yes. Interestingly, I want. But so what I want to do is, yes, that's not only note modules. I also want to say, hey, what about vendor? Yeah, and then we're kind of good, I guess. And I kind of, ooh, hope that didn't kind of break stuff here. Cool, share anyway. Remote is already on GitHub. Is it? Is it already on GitHub? Wonderful, absolutely wonderful. Default change list is the only thing that changed, and then I kind of have to be, wow, let's maybe check this one. And active bookmarks. Okay, that's all the kind of like, okay. That's going to be so painful. Okay. All right. Okay. Yeah, that's going to be damn painful. That's why I hate zip packages. That's why I hate zip packages, my friends. Okay, so what else is new? Anybody online? Let's see if we have any kind of chat messages. This is the, what is this? What is this? Okay. Kind of trying to figure out what, so for one person watching on Twitch, I suppose that is still, I don't know who that is, but certainly kind of cool. And oh, we're really watching this. Really watching this, huh? Okay. Well, let's talk about like the path forward a little bit. So the reason I'm sharing this on GitHub is so you can kind of check that out and we can work on this together and you can familiarize yourself with that and then basically see where we're going with this, right? And we kind of like start collaborating on that basis. Oh, is that hard to watch? Is that hard to watch? Let's do something meanwhile, huh? Because I have exactly 9 more minutes before I jump into a meeting. And in that time, let me talk about a couple of general things here. So what I'm currently working on is a Twitch overlay extension that would allow you to kind of like actually click on overlays rather than just seeing them flying in on the video, to make them actual clickable experiences that can be used for all kinds of things, right? So if you want to have like whether or not you want to show sponsors, or if you want people to click on a link to visit something and so on. So that's going to be something that I'm going to publish also, and kind of like see if people will kind of be interested in using that kind of stuff. And that's why I'm kind of like steering everybody like from all platforms to Twitch as well, because the interaction possibilities are actually kind of like preferable to other platforms, but at the end it really doesn't matter. Really doesn't matter at all. Okay, so we're not even half through, right? I don't even know if I can wait for this. So by now I have like 7 more minutes. I've got 7 more minutes for this to finish. Yeah. I see. At least I have a little bit more real estate now, right? So what's kind of interesting is that kind of noticed that it's kind of hard to read, but I also have don't want to have a huge font, right? So what I kind of tried to do is to get a little bit more real estate on the screen to kind of see if I get better feedback on the font size and stuff. Let's see. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, that's kind of painful to watch. It's kind of painful to watch. On the other hand, I mean, that's what it is, right? That's why you kind of want to have packages rather than just assets and files. And actually, now that I think of it, we're probably idiots too. Because if this is a repo, we could have just required it nonetheless, right? I mean, it's kind of hard to believe that that's not intended like that from them. But okay. I mean, this is, like 5 months ago. It must be some kind of, but there isn't even a README, right? Am I wrong here? Let me see what else they got going. Code Mirror next. The next generation of Code Mirror in browser editor. Oh, cool. Let's see what that does. Right? So, it's the Code Mirror 6 prototype. Okay. A complete rewrite. Interesting. And it's an npm package. Of course it is. But this seems to be kind of in the making. Whoops. Yeah, let's ignore that and hope for the best. Nope. Nope. Okay, I've got 4 more minutes. I'm slowly getting nervous. Yeah, that's how it goes. That's how it goes, right? Certainly how it goes. Okay. Okay, so far so good. All right, so that's the repo. I'm going to post that in the chat, I suppose, and then oops, and then you can kind of visit that as if you want to, right? There you go. And should probably do one more reload to make sure that this works. Yep, there you go. And this is then basically our something that I'm going to quickly fix directly in master. It's probably that one. Yep. All right. All right, and that's basically it, and concludes basically our starting point.